Hi, I'm Jim Dew, a wealth expert for almost 30 years, and divorce is nothing anyone really plans on. I've been to a lot of weddings, and every wedding I've been to, people seem in love and they seem like they want to stay together forever. So divorce is not planned, but it's a financial burden, it's a financial challenge that when you have to go through it, there's some things that you can do to make it easier on you and your soon-to-be former spouse. No one plans on getting divorced when they get married, but there are some things you can do to reduce the financial burden and the troubles that are caused by divorce by thinking through a few things and following a few tips. The first thing is, if you have wealth already created and you're not married yet, I'm a big proponent of prenuptial agreements. Now, sometimes people say, that seems like you don't love the person. Guess what? As long as you're together, you're gonna share in the wealth and the money. But if you break up, there's no reason why one person should give up a huge amount of wealth that they created that the other person had nothing to do with. So I love prenuptial agreements for people who are wealthy, who are getting engaged or married. You have to think about that ahead of time. And I always say, that's a hard thing to bring up when you've been dating for a year or two and you get engaged. It needs to be brought up early in the dating process. So you're just communicating about, hey, if I ever get married again, I would want to make sure that there's a prenuptial agreement. I would bet on us being married for a long time, but that helps us protect ourselves against anything like that that might happen in the future. If you've accumulated wealth and you're considering getting married or you're just dating, getting a prenup is a smart financial decision. It's something you have to do to protect yourself. If you're the primary caregiver for children, are there things that you need to be aware of as it pertains to divorce? Absolutely. There's a couple of things that happen in divorce. Often the primary caregiver is not the one making the money for the family. So you have to be especially careful in protecting yourself. And that's making sure you understand where all the finances are, where all the accounts are, where all the assets are, because often the person making the money is the person managing the money, and you may be left out in the lurch. You want to make sure you understand that stuff. That's important in any marriage. I think both spouses need to understand where the financial assets are in case something happens to the other person. The other thing is, there's two parts of settlement that I usually see when it comes to divorce. So the first is alimony or spousal support, and that's supporting the spouse while the spouse has time to get on her feet or his feet during and after the caregiving for the children. So you want to be aware of that. And that can go on for a certain number of years. In some states that can go on for a lifetime, but usually it's a certain number of years to allow the spouse to rehabilitate, to get his or her own ability to make money after the caring for the kids ends. There's also child support, and that is the money to support those children so that the spouse that takes care of the child has support to be able to send the kid to school, buy the kid clothes, all those things that are necessary and needed. So just make sure you understand those different income streams after divorce, and understand that you as a caregiver have equal rights to your spouse that makes the money. Understanding those rights and also making sure that the way assets are being divided and the way child support and alimony or spousal support is paid out should be factored in to the divorce settlement to make sure it's fair for both parties. From the primary breadwinner's perspective, how do you handle alimony and spousal support? If your divorce was final before 2019, alimony or spousal support is deductible on your tax return. After that, alimony or spousal support that you pay is not deductible. So there's an increase in the taxation or the after-tax cost of alimony or spousal support. What you really want to do is you want to consider this almost like a mortgage payment, a payment that's mandatory. And you have to factor that into your financial plan and your cash flow. So as you work through your divorce decree, you want to know that that's a commitment that you have to make. In fact, you can go to jail if you don't make your spousal support or your child support payments. So you want to make sure that you're making those payments and you build it into your plan as something just like a mortgage that you have to pay. So coming to grips with that and understanding how your financial condition can support that is a really important step that you need to take. So planning in advance, knowing that that's a mandatory payment that you have to commit to, and making sure that you can live financially and invest, not just live, but invest for your future outside of those obligations. how can you financially plan after a divorce so that you can actually continue to grow your money, so you can have financial security, so you can not just survive, but thrive after divorce. There's some key things you need to think about. So the first thing is go back to the basics. Like really figure out what's most important to you. So sometimes people get attached to a lifestyle when they're married, and when you're married, sometimes you have two incomes, or you have fewer expenses, right? You're sharing a household, and the expenses can go up and the income can go down after divorce. So you want to get really clear on what you're spending money on and what matters most to you. So go through your checking account, go through your itemized bill from your credit card and decide like what matters to you. Really get an understanding about what's most important to you. How do you do that? Well, go through your credit card statement, go through your checking account, look at all the line items of exactly what you're spending money on. And with each line item, ask yourself, do I really need to spend money on that? Is that really important to me? Does that move the needle? Because you know what matters most in your life? Your relationships, your belief in who you are. That sounds corny, but that's what matters most. Get back in touch with what matters and realize that there might be a time frame when you need to sacrifice some things. So only sacrifice the things that are least important to you. So every line item, ask yourself, how important is this in my life? Because you want to get on a spending path that you feel good about, that you feel comfortable about. Because if you're spending more than you're making, that's never a good place. That never feels good. So be really careful about that. And then also think about how can you make more money? Because the other solution is making more money. So if you have a business, how can you add other products or services? How can you increase your prices? How can you increase margins? How can you do more sales and marketing to make more money? And if you don't have a business, think about a side hustle. Is there a way you can start an info product? Is there something else you can do to make money on the side? Because making more money solves this problem too. Divorce is not the end, but planning ahead with the finances can make all the difference for you. I get asked a lot, Jim, have you ever helped clients go through divorce? And I have many times. And here's the most important thing, the first thing. If you're going through a divorce, the best outcome is to spend the least amount of money on attorneys. Because guess what? Attorneys are incentivized to make you fight more. And I heard a divorce attorney one time, he said this to me. He said, Jim, when people say, but I'm fighting for the principal, he said, when they say that, I say, get ready to give up principal. When you fight for the principal, you're going to give up principal. So I know you're going to be angry with your soon-to-be former spouse. It's inevitable. I know you're going to paint that person as a terrible person, and maybe they are, but it's not going to help you get out of this in a good financial situation if you're fighting and spending money on attorneys. So I'm going to give you the best scenario for divorce. I believe you and your spouse each have to have your own representation, because if you don't have your own representation, you're not going to know your rights, and you could get in a situation where you get a bad outcome. Don't hire attorneys that love to fight. Don't hire the pit bull attorney. I hear that all the time. I want to get a pit bull attorney who's going to destroy my spouse. You don't want that. You want the attorney who's going to help you solve the problem as quickly as possible. And remember, you need to manage the attorney, not let the attorney manage you. So if you each have representation, if you're talking and you go to mediation, you can work things out with the least cost, in my experience, and with the best outcome. So get representation, not to fight, but just so you know your rights, and go to mediation. That's the best thing you can do for a financial outcome. The other thing is the emotional turmoil. Often people fight for years and years in divorce. And you know what you're doing while you're fighting? You're losing years of your life. You're having a terrible time. You're not making more money. You're not building a business. You're not building a side hustle. You're just focused on this internal fight between you and your soon-to-be former spouse. Get representation, go to mediation, solve it that way if at all possible. And by the way, you're not perfect either. Realize that you want to make sure that you get out of this in the best possible financial condition possible. And to do that, make sure that you're understanding those things. Now, if you're talking to your spouse, talk about how you're going to manage expenses during the divorce, because you don't want your spouse spending crazy money and you spending crazy money and you trying to outspend each other or resenting each other for spending money. Try to be cordial and understand how you're spending money and why and when. And if you have kids, for goodness sakes, love the kids more than you hate each other, to work it out both financially and also as co-parents, because those kids are always going to have you as a mom and a dad, and you want to make sure they know that they're loved for, they're cared for, and that they're supported. And the only way you're going to do that is if you're not hating each other in front of the kids. So financially speaking, have a game plan, monitor the expenses, and get out as quickly, as smoothly, and as confidently as you can. Divorce doesn't have to be the end financially. And in fact, sometimes it's the beginning. It's your chance for freedom to do what you really want to do, to change careers, to build a business, to do a side hustle. So financially speaking, divorce isn't the end, but you have to manage it carefully, understand where you're spending money, realize that you have a future, but it just takes some care and some attention today. I really appreciate you watching my video. I hope you got some great information, and I hope you'll watch my next one.